Welcome to Swift Tale. If this is your first time here, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to leave a comment below, because today's story is one you won't forget. Let me ask you something. What would you do if one act of kindness brought a stranger into your life? A stranger whose dying words would change everything you thought you knew about courage, love, and destiny. Tonight's story is about James Walker, a single father and military veteran trying to rebuild his life after tragedy. Haunted by the loss of his wife and the memories of war, James spends his days doing his best to raise his young daughter, Emma, while fighting his own inner battles. He's a man of discipline, faith, and quiet strength, but beneath that calm exterior lies a soul weighed down by guilt and pain. One cold, stormy night, everything changes. On his way home from another exhausting day of rejection and disappointment, James comes across a wrecked car by the side of a lonely road. Inside, he finds a woman, barely breathing, her clothes torn and her eyes filled with fear. She whispers something that will haunt him forever. "Don't let them find me, they'll kill us both." Then she collapses in his arms. What James doesn't yet know is that this woman isn't who she appears to be. She's a powerful CEO in disguise, hiding from a world of betrayal and greed. And what she's running from is something that could destroy both their lives. This story isn't just about mystery and danger. It's about redemption, sacrifice, and how one simple act of compassion can change everything. It's a reminder that every person you meet carries hidden scars, and sometimes helping a stranger can unlock the deepest truths within yourself. So stay with me until the end, because what this woman whispers before taking her last breath will not only change James's life, it might just change yours too. James Walker's mornings always began before the sun rose, not because he wanted them to, but because sleep never came easy. Years of service in the military had trained him to wake at the slightest noise, to react before he could even think. Now, back home in a quiet town that barely remembered his name, those instincts had turned into ghosts, memories that replayed every night when the world fell silent. He was a man haunted by duty, loss, and the aching loneliness of a life that hadn't turned out the way he'd hoped. His house was small and worn but full of warmth because of one reason: Emma, his 7-year-old daughter. Her laughter was the only thing that could break through the fog of his thoughts. She had her mother's eyes, bright and full of mischief, and her smile could calm the storms that raged inside him. Every morning, James packed her lunch, brushed her hair into a messy ponytail, and walked her to the school bus stop, pretending everything was fine. To the world, he was just another single dad doing his best. To Emma, he was a hero, her hero. But to himself, James wasn't sure who he was anymore. After leaving the army, he'd tried everything to build a stable life. Construction jobs, security work, even odd handyman tasks for neighbors who paid what they could. But steady work was hard to find, especially for a man carrying the invisible weight of war. The VA appointments were long, the forms endless, and the memories sharper than ever. Sometimes he'd sit alone at night with a photo of his late wife, Sarah, whispering promises he couldn't keep. "I'm trying," he'd say softly, "for her. For Emma." Despite the pain, James carried himself with quiet dignity. He didn't complain. He didn't pity himself. Every scar, every sleepless night, he wore as proof that he'd survived. And though the world had forgotten the uniform he once wore, he hadn't forgotten his oath to protect, to serve, and to never walk away from someone in need. That oath would soon be tested in ways he could never imagine. Because that night, when the rain came down harder than he'd seen in years, and the road ahead blurred beneath the storm's fury, James would find himself face to face with a decision that would change not only his life, but the future of everyone he loved. The soldier in him thought he'd left the battlefield long ago, but destiny was about to prove otherwise. The storm came out of nowhere that night, sheets of rain hammering the windshield, thunder rolling across the valley like distant artillery fire. James gripped the steering wheel tighter, his old truck rattling against the wind as he tried to see through the blur of water and darkness. He was heading home from yet another failed job interview, the kind where they smiled politely and said, "We'll call you," before tossing his resume aside. The disappointment weighed on him, but what hurt most was the thought of facing Emma again with nothing new to offer. He turned the wipers to full speed, muttering a curse under his breath, when his headlights caught something on the side of the road. A faint glint of metal twisted into the ditch. At first, he thought it was debris from the storm, but then he saw it. A car flipped and crushed, smoke curling into the rain. Instinct took over. James slammed the brakes, grabbed the flashlight from his glove compartment, and ran into the downpour. "Hello, can you hear me?" he shouted, his boots splashing through the mud. The smell of gasoline filled the air. Inside the wreckage, a woman was slumped over the steering wheel, her face pale and streaked with blood. Her clothes were soaked, her breathing shallow. James quickly scanned the scene, checking for movement, for danger. His military training kicked in without hesitation: secure the area, assess the wounded, stabilize if possible. He pulled open the passenger door, glass shattering under his hands. "Ma'am, stay with me. You're going to be all right," he said, voice steady but heart pounding. She stirred, her lips trembling as she tried to speak. James leaned closer, trying to hear her over the rain and the crackle of the damaged engine. That's when she whispered something that sent a chill down his spine. "Don't let them find me," she breathed weakly, her eyes darting toward the dark woods beyond the road. "They'll kill us both." Before he could ask who they were, her eyes fluttered shut. James felt for a pulse, faint but still there. He pulled her from the wreck just as lightning split the sky. Cradling her in his arms, he carried her to his truck, trying to shield her from the rain. He called 911, but the signal cut in and out, no reception in that stretch of rural highway. He cursed under his breath, glancing down at the woman. Something about her felt out of place. Her clothes weren't ordinary, fine fabric, an expensive wristwatch now cracked by the impact. She didn't look like someone who belonged on a road like this. With no time to lose, James made a choice. He couldn't leave her there to die, and he couldn't wait for help that might never come. He started the truck. Water splashing against the tires as he drove toward town. Every few seconds, he glanced at her, watching her chest rise and fall. She looked fragile, terrified, and mysterious all at once. What he didn't know was that this act of compassion, this one decision to stop, was the moment fate changed everything. The woman beside him wasn't just any accident victim. She was someone powerful, someone hunted, and someone who carried a secret that would soon pull James and his daughter into a storm far greater than the one raging outside. By the time James reached his small farmhouse on the edge of town, the storm had calmed to a steady drizzle. He pulled into the gravel driveway, headlights cutting across the porch, and carefully lifted the unconscious woman from the truck. His arms ached, but he carried her inside, laying her on the old couch near the fireplace. Emma, startled by the commotion, appeared at the top of the stairs, clutching her stuffed bear. "Daddy, who's that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. James gave her a reassuring smile. "It's okay, sweetheart, she's hurt. I found her on the road. Go get the first aid kit for me, all right?" Emma nodded and hurried off, while James cleaned the woman's wounds with the same precision he once used on the battlefield. He wrapped a gash on her arm, checked her breathing, and made sure she wasn't going into shock. The woman stirred faintly, murmuring words he couldn't quite understand, something about trust no one. When she finally woke the next morning, sunlight filtered softly through the curtains. She blinked, disoriented, scanning the small living room that smelled faintly of coffee and wood smoke. James was sitting nearby, his daughter at the table drawing with crayons. "You're safe," he said gently. "You were in an accident last night. I brought you here after I couldn't get a signal to call for help." The woman sat up slowly, wincing at the pain in her ribs. "Thank you," she said, her voice weak but composed. "My name is Anna Cole." James nodded. "I'm James, and that's my little helper, Emma." Emma looked up and smiled shyly. "Hi, Miss Anna." Anna smiled back, her expression softening for the first time. There was something graceful about her, refined, even. Her clothes, though torn, were tailored, her nails manicured. Everything about her said wealth and sophistication, not someone who'd be driving alone on a back road in the middle of a storm. Over the next few days, Anna stayed to recover. She insisted she'd contact her family soon, but every time James offered his phone, she hesitated, claiming she'd lost her contacts. She helped with dishes, thanked Emma for her drawings, and often stared out the window with a faraway look in her eyes. At night, James heard her packing quietly, whispering to herself phrases like, "They know I'm alive," or "The files, they can't find them." Something wasn't adding up. James had seen enough liars in his life to recognize when someone was hiding the truth. He didn't press her yet, but every instinct told him she was running from something dangerous. Then the questions started coming. Two men in black SUVs drove through the neighborhood, asking if anyone had seen a missing executive who might have been in an accident nearby. Their tone was polite, but their eyes weren't. One of them lingered a little too long on James's front porch, glancing past him into the house. That night, when James told Anna about the visit, she went pale. "You didn't tell them anything, did you?" she asked sharply. "I told them I hadn't seen anyone," he said carefully. "Should I have?" Anna looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, you did the right thing." Her hands trembled slightly, and for a moment, James saw something flicker in her eyes, not fear, but resolve. Whoever she wasn't just an innocent woman caught in an accident. There was a story buried deep behind those guarded expressions, one she wasn't ready to share. And though James didn't know it yet, by letting her stay, he had just opened the door to a secret that powerful people would kill to protect. The tension in the Walker household grew heavier with each passing day. James tried to act normal, making breakfast, dropping Emma off at school, fixing things around the house, but his mind kept circling back to Anna. Her story didn't add up, and he could feel it in his gut. Every time he caught her staring at the news on his old TV, her expression shifted: fear, regret, something close to guilt. Then one evening, the truth began to crack through the walls she had built around herself. James had been cleaning up after dinner when a breaking news report came on. The anchor's voice was sharp and urgent. "Authorities continue searching for Anna Calloway, CEO of Calloway Industries, missing for 3 days following allegations of corporate embezzlement and internal sabotage." James froze. The photo on the screen was unmistakable, the same face that had been sitting at his kitchen table just hours earlier. He turned slowly toward her. Anna stood at the doorway, eyes wide, her spoon slipping from her hand and clattering against the floor. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the faint rain outside. So James finally said quietly, "You're not Anna Cole." Anna sank into a chair, her shoulders trembling. "No," she admitted, "my real name is Anna Calloway." She took a deep breath, her voice cracking. "And before you decide whether to throw me out or turn me in, please, let me explain." James didn't interrupt. He crossed his arms and waited. Anna told him everything. She was the head of Calloway Industries, a company her father had built from nothing. For years, she'd fought to reform its inner workings, to make it more ethical, more human. But when she uncovered evidence that several board members were secretly profiting from fraudulent contracts, specifically those tied to veteran healthcare programs, they turned on her. The same programs James and his friends had relied on after returning from war were being exploited for profit. "They were stealing from the very people who risked their lives," she said bitterly, "and when I confronted them, they tried to silence me. The car crash wasn't an accident, James, it was a message. They wanted me dead." James felt a slow burn rise in his chest. "You're saying they're stealing government funds meant for veterans?" "Yes," she whispered, "and I have proof, files, emails, bank transfers, everything. I was on my way to meet a federal investigator when they ran me off the road." The room fell silent. James rubbed a hand over his face, torn between disbelief and anger. It all made sense now, the panic, the men in suits, the whisper about being hunted. He thought of all the nights he'd sat with his fellow veterans, talking about how their benefits were delayed or denied. Now he knew why. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Out of everyone, why trust a stranger?" Anna looked at him with quiet intensity. "Because when I opened my eyes that night, you didn't look at me with pity or suspicion. You looked at me like I mattered, like someone worth saving. You don't realize how rare that is." James didn't know what to say. For the first time in years, someone had seen him, not as a broken soldier, not as a charity case, but as a man who still had something to give. And in that moment, the soldier inside him stirred again. "All right," he said at last, his voice steady. "If what you're saying is true, then you're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting for people like me. So whatever happens next, you're not doing it alone." Anna's eyes filled with tears, not of weakness, but of relief. She nodded slowly. "Then we'd better prepare, because once they know I'm alive, they won't stop until I'm gone for good." And as the wind howled outside once more, James realized that this wasn't just about protecting a stranger anymore. This was about justice, redemption, and taking one final stand for everything he believed in. The morning after Anna's confession, the air felt heavier, thicker, as if the world itself knew danger was closing in. James had been up since before dawn, packing the kitchen floor, his mind racing. He checked the locks twice, then 3 times. He didn't say it aloud, but he knew what was coming. Men like the ones Anna had described didn't just go away. They cleaned up their messes, and now that mess was them. Anna sat at the table, sipping coffee she barely tasted. Her eyes were distant, her face pale beneath the dim kitchen light. "They'll find me," she said quietly. "They always do." "Not if I can help it," James replied. There was a calm in his voice that came from years of facing chaos. He had faced enemies before, different uniforms, different motives, but fear was fear, and he knew how to confront it. Around mid-morning, a black SUV rolled slowly down the dirt road leading to his house. James spotted it through the window and froze. The vehicle stopped by the mailbox, then crept forward again before turning around and driving off. Emma was in the living room playing with her crayons, oblivious to the silent war brewing outside. By afternoon, another SUV appeared. This time it didn't leave. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, their movements too controlled, too deliberate. James's instincts flared. He told Emma to go upstairs and stay in her room, then opened the door just as one of the men approached. "Good afternoon, sir," the man said smoothly, flashing what looked like a badge. "We're with Federal Investigations. We're looking for a missing woman who may have been in an accident nearby." James stared at the badge without taking it. "You with the FBI?" The man hesitated a fraction too long before answering. "That's right." James gave a tight smile. "Then you won't mind if I call your office to confirm that?" The man's expression hardened. "That won't be necessary, Mr. Walker." James's hand tensed around the doorframe. "Funny, you seem to know my name." The second man stepped closer, his voice low. "If you've seen her, it's in your best interest to cooperate." That was the moment James knew they weren't agents. He didn't wait for another word. He slammed the door, locked it, and grabbed the shotgun from behind the cabinet. Anna was already standing by the window, trembling. "They're here, aren't they?" "Yeah," James said, checking the weapon. "Pack a bag for you and Emma. We're leaving now." Within minutes, they were in the truck, driving down the back road through the forest. The rain had started again, pounding against the windshield as James pushed the engine harder. In the rearview mirror, headlights appeared, then another pair. They were being followed. "James," Anna said, clutching the dashboard, "they'll kill you if they catch us." He glanced at her, eyes hard. "They'll have to try." He took a sharp turn down an unmarked path he used for hunting, mud flying up behind them. The SUVs swerved, one losing traction and spinning into a ditch. James kept driving until the road opened into a small clearing by the river, a place he hadn't been in years. They hid there until sunrise. Emma slept in Anna's arms while James stood watch, his breath visible in the cold morning air. When Anna looked at him, she didn't see a broken veteran anymore. She saw a protector, a soldier reborn. By the time dawn colored the horizon, James knew there was no going back. They couldn't hide forever. Anna had to finish what she started, and he had to help her do it. Somewhere out there were files that could expose everything, but getting to them would mean walking straight into the lion's den. Anna looked up at him as he loaded the truck again. "You don't have to do this," she said softly. James met her eyes. "You're wrong," he said. "I do, because if we don't stop them now, they'll keep doing this, to veterans, to families, to people who can't fight back. I've already lost enough. I won't lose again." As they drove off into the rising sun, the threat was no longer a shadow on the horizon. It was a storm waiting ahead, and James Walker was ready to face it head-on. For the first time in a long time, the world slowed down. After days of running, hiding, and fearing every sound in the distance, James, Anna, and Emma found temporary refuge in an old cabin deep in the woods, a place James had used years ago for solitude and hunting trips. The air there smelled of pine and earth, and though the wind still whispered danger, the silence brought something else too: peace. Inside the cabin, The three of them began to settle into a strange kind of rhythm. Emma, resilient and bright, was the first to adapt. She showed Anna how to make pancakes on the wood stove, told her stories about her mom, and even convinced her to help decorate the dusty shelves with wildflowers they picked from the nearby clearing. Laughter, soft, hesitant at first, started to fill the rooms again. At night when Emma was asleep, James and Anna sat by the fire, both lost in their thoughts. The flickering light cast warm shadows across Anna's face, revealing exhaustion and something deeper, regret. "You know," she said one evening, staring into the flames, "I used to think success meant control. The higher I climbed, the more powerful I became, the safer I'd feel. But I was wrong. All that power did was make me a target." James nodded slowly. "Power doesn't change people, it just shows who they really are." She turned to him, eyes glistening. "And who are you, James Walker?" He smiled faintly, poking the fire with a stick. "A man who's still figuring that out." Anna's expression softened. "You saved my life when you didn't have to. You could have driven past that wreck like everyone else probably did." "Couldn't," James said simply. "I made a promise once to never walk away from someone who needs help. I didn't realize it'd still matter after I took the uniform off." Anna leaned back, studying him quietly. "You carry a lot," she said. "You don't talk about it, but I see it in your eyes." He hesitated, then spoke, his voice low. "My wife, Sarah, she died 2 years ago. Drunk driver. I was overseas when it happened. I never forgave myself for not being there for Emma, for her." His throat tightened. "Since then, I've been lost, trying to be everything for my little girl, trying to fill a hole that can't be filled." Anna reached out, resting her hand over his. "You've done more than you think. You didn't lose your purpose, you just needed to find a new one." Those words lingered between them, quiet but powerful. In that moment, something inside James shifted. For the first time in years, the weight on his chest felt lighter. The following days were different. Anna started to regain her strength, her laughter returning in bits and pieces. She taught Emma card games, helped James repair the cabin roof, and cooked dinners that filled the room with warmth. The more time they spent together, the more the walls around them, emotional and physical, began to crumble. Yet underneath the fragile peace, danger still pulsed like an unseen current. James could feel it in his bones. The men hunting Anna wouldn't stop until she was silenced. But something had changed. He no longer saw himself as a man running from his past. He was now a man fighting for something worth living for. One evening, as the sunset painted the forest in gold and crimson, Anna stood beside him on the porch. "When this is over," she said softly, "I want to build something different. A foundation, something that helps veterans like you, people who have been forgotten." James looked at her, surprised. "You really think we'll get that chance?" "I have to," she whispered. "You gave me a reason to believe again." He smiled gently. "Then we'll make it happen, together." In that fleeting calm before the coming storm, three broken lives found healing in one another. James discovered hope again, Anna found purpose beyond power, and Emma, innocent and unshaken, became the thread holding them all together. But peace, as James knew too well, never lasted forever. The world had a cruel way of testing the strong, and the next test was closer than any of them realized. The peace they'd built in the woods couldn't last forever. It began with the sound of a distant engine, faint, low, but unmistakable. James had been splitting firewood when he heard it. He froze, the axe mid-swing, his instincts igniting like a match. Anna was inside helping Emma with her schoolwork, unaware that the world outside their fragile haven was closing in. "Anna," he called, bursting through the cabin door. "Grab Emma, now." Anna looked up, startled by the urgency in his voice. "What is it?" "They found us." Before she could respond, headlights cut through the trees. The crunch of tires on gravel echoed like thunder. James's pulse raced as he grabbed the pistol from the drawer, a relic from his service days, one he'd hoped never to use again. He moved to the window and saw two SUVs pulling into the clearing, black as the night and crawling with intent. Anna's face went pale. "We can't run, can we?" James shook his head grimly. "Not this time." The first man stepped out of the vehicle, shouting into the darkness, "Anna Calloway, it's over, hand over the files," and maybe we let the kid walk away." James's grip tightened around the gun. "You're not getting anywhere near her or my daughter." The man smirked, raising his weapon. "You really think you can stop us, soldier?" The next few minutes were chaos. Bullets ripped through the cabin walls, splintering wood and glass. James pushed Anna and Emma down behind the couch, returning fire through the shattered window. His heart pounded, every muscle moving on instinct. Emma cried softly, clutching her mother's locket, the only thing she had left of Sarah. When the gunfire paused, Anna turned to James, her expression calm in the midst of terror. "James, the files, they're in my bag, everything they've done, all the proof. You have to get them to the press, if I don't make it." "Don't," he interrupted. "You're not dying today." But she shook her head, her eyes fierce. "You saved me once, let me do this." Before he could stop her, Anna stood, clutching the flash drive. She ran toward the back door, drawing the gunfire away from Emma. James shouted her name, firing cover shots as she disappeared into the trees. He heard one scream, sharp and sudden, then silence. He ran after her. The forest was alive with shadows and gun smoke. He found her on the riverbank, collapsed beside a fallen tree. Blood darkened her shirt, but her hand was still clenched around the drive. When she saw him, she smiled faintly, pain flickering across her face. "You shouldn't have followed me," she whispered. "Not a chance," he said, dropping to his knees beside her. "You're going to be okay, Anna. Stay with me." Her breathing was shallow. "No, James, you have to go. Take it. Finish what I started. Promise me." He took the drive, his hands shaking. "I promise." Anna reached up, brushing her fingers against his cheek. "You showed me what real strength looks like," she said softly. "It's not in power or money, it's in love. Don't stop fighting for it, for the truth for her." Her last words were barely a whisper, carried away by the sound of the river. James held her as the rain began to fall again, his tears mixing with the water running down her face. By the time the authorities arrived, summoned by the emergency signal Anna had triggered before running, she was gone. The men who had hunted her were either dead or captured, their power stripped away in a storm of evidence and exposure. James stood by the riverbank long after the chaos faded, holding the flash drive tightly in his hand. It wasn't just proof, it was her legacy. Anna Calloway had sacrificed everything to bring justice to the people she'd once served, and James knew he owed it to her to make sure the world heard her story. As dawn broke, he carried Emma to the truck and whispered a silent vow. "I'll finish what you started, Anna, I swear it." And with that, the single dad and veteran who had once felt broken drove away into the morning light, not as a man running from his past, but as one carrying the torch of someone who believed in him more than he ever believed in himself. Weeks passed, but the echoes of that night in the woods lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. The world was changing because of her. The files Anna had entrusted to James became the foundation of a national scandal. Major networks exploded with headlines about corporate corruption, hidden bribes, and environmental crimes tied to Callaway Industries. Executives resigned, investors fled, and the public demanded accountability. Through it all, James kept his promise. He handed over the evidence to the authorities and the media, ensuring Anna's sacrifice wouldn't be buried. The veteran who once struggled to find meaning beyond survival was now the voice for justice. Yet, amid the noise and praise, he stayed humble. His only focus was Emma, keeping her safe, grounded, and proud of the life they'd built together. But fate had one more message to deliver. One morning, James received a letter sealed in an elegant white envelope with the Callaway family crest. His heart pounded as he turned it over in his hands. There was no return address, just his name written in delicate handwriting. He opened it slowly, and inside was a folded letter and a photo of Anna, smiling beside a young girl who looked a lot like Emma. The letter began, "If you're reading this, James, it means the truth has finally come to light. I don't know if I survived to see it, but if I didn't, please know that I found peace in the end. You gave me that. You gave me something I hadn't felt in years, hope." James's hands trembled as he read on. "There's something you need to know. My illness wasn't as sudden as I made it seem. I'd been fighting it quietly for years, afraid to let anyone in. But when I met you and Emma, I realized that family isn't always blood. It's the people who stand beside you when the world falls apart. I left something for Emma in the box with this letter. It belonged to my daughter Lily, who passed before her time. I want Emma to have it, a reminder that love doesn't end when we do. Tears blurred James's vision. He opened the small box that came with the letter and found a silver bracelet engraved with two simple words, "Be brave." He showed it to Emma that evening as the sun set behind their home. "It's from Miss Anna," he said softly. Emma turned the bracelet over in her small hands, her eyes wide. "She's in heaven now, isn't she?" James nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, sweetheart, but she's watching over us, and she wants you to be brave just like her." For a long time, they sat together on the porch, the golden light wrapping them in warmth. James felt something stir inside him, not grief, not loss, but gratitude. For the first time in years, the weight on his heart lifted. Anna's courage had not only exposed corruption, but had given him something far more powerful, a renewed sense of purpose. Days later, James was invited to a televised memorial in Anna's honor. He didn't want the spotlight, but he went for Emma and for Anna. Standing at the podium, dressed in his old service uniform, he looked out at the crowd and began to speak. Anna Calloway wasn't just a CEO, she was a fighter, a woman who made mistakes but had the courage to make them right, no matter the cost. She taught me that redemption isn't about erasing the past, it's about changing what we do next. His words silenced the room. He glanced toward Emma, sitting in the front row, clutching the silver bracelet. She reminded me that even broken people can build something beautiful again. When he finished, the audience rose in applause, not just for Anna, but for the man who had carried her final mission across the finish line. That night, back at home, James looked at the stars through Emma's window and whispered, "You did it, Anna. You changed everything." And deep down, in the quiet of that moment, he could almost hear her whisper back, "No, James, we did." Months had passed since Anna's story shook the nation, but for James and Emma, life had settled into a peaceful rhythm again. The chaos was gone, replaced by something quieter, something sacred, healing. The world knew Anna Calloway as the dying CEO who exposed a corporate empire's dark heart, but James and Emma knew her as something more, the woman who taught them both what courage, forgiveness, and love truly meant. The seasons changed, painting their small town in gold and red. James had taken a job at the local community center, mentoring young veterans struggling to adjust to civilian life. It wasn't glamorous, but it was purpose, and for the first time in years, he felt whole. His story and Anna's had inspired countless others to speak up, to fight for truth, and to never give up, no matter how broken life had made them. One afternoon, as the sun set behind the hills, James sat on the porch with Emma, watching her draw in her sketchbook. She was older now, stronger, wiser beyond her years. The silver bracelet still circled her wrist, catching the sunlight. "Daddy," she said, looking up, "do you think Miss Anna can see us right now?" James smiled softly. "I think she never stopped watching, sweetheart." Emma nodded, her little brow furrowing in thought. "Then I'm gonna draw her a picture, one where she's not sick anymore, one where she's happy." He swallowed hard, his chest tightening with pride. She'd love that. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, James opened his laptop and began typing. It was something he'd been meaning to do for months, a letter, not for the world, but for Anna. He didn't know if it was foolish, but it felt right. "Dear Anna, you once told me that strength isn't about how much we can carry, it's about how much we can give. You gave everything, and in doing so, you gave me back my life. Because of you, Emma's growing up in a world that's just a little more honest, a little more fair." I still think about that night by the river, about what you said before you closed your eyes. You were wrong, though you didn't just change me, you changed everything. You made me believe again in people, in second chances, in love that doesn't fade with time. Wherever you are, I hope you're free. I hope you know we kept your promise, and we'll keep it forever. He closed the laptop, exhaling deeply. For the first time, the silence didn't feel heavy, it felt peaceful. The next morning, James and Emma visited a new park that had just opened in town. At the entrance stood a bronze statue, Anna Calloway, standing tall, a briefcase in one hand and a dove perched on the other. Below it, a plaque read, "In memory of Anna Calloway, a CEO who chose truth over power and gave her last breath to light the way for others." James placed a small bouquet of wildflowers at the base. Emma laid her drawing next to them, a smiling Anna standing beneath a bright blue sky. "Goodbye, Miss Anna," Emma whispered. "Thank you for helping my dad." James put an arm around her shoulders, "And for helping both of us." As they walked away, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the statue. It was as if the light itself lingered there, a quiet reminder that some legacies never fade and some people never truly leave. James glanced at his daughter, at the life they'd built out of pain, courage, and love, and smiled. "You know, Emma," he said, "maybe being brave isn't about never being scared. Maybe it's about doing what's right, even when you are." Emma looked up at him, her bracelet gleaming, just like Miss Anna did. Exactly like Miss Anna did. They walked home hand in hand, their silhouettes fading into the sunset, father and daughter, carrying forward the story of a woman who once whispered something powerful enough to change everything. And as the screen fades to black, James's voice narrates the final words. Thank you for watching Swift Tale. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments below, what does being brave mean to you? Until next time, keep believing in kindness, in courage, and in the power of one person to change the world.